Mistake number 3, let's get into it. It is giving loads of classroom activities that don't lead to learning. And I'm going to turn the camera back on here because this is the tough love about Pinterest. Pinterest is really pretty and it, gives you all these ideas. And I have been guilty of going down the paper mache rabbit hole as much as anyone. I really have. However, when it comes to backing up your literacy teaching, literacy centres by themselves are not going to teach children to read. Good, strong instruction does. And you can't substitute an activity in a literacy centre for the sort of practice we just saw in that phonics and reading review. Your literacy centre is a hands-on opportunity for children to engage, but that actually doesn't mean you need to do a group rotation and kids spend an hour of their day in hands-on activities. And I'll tell you what I mean by that and how that you can make that work for you. So let's have a look at some activities that I think are maybe not as effective as others, but I do want to say that there are no effective teachers, there's plenty of effective teachers, I beg your pardon. There are no effective centres without the explicit teaching that comes with it. And it's not just I taught a lesson, it's the follow-up stuff according to the explicit teaching model. So this one here with the pegs, now I love a good peg activity. They are simple to put together and the kids like them. But in this one, we're assuming that this little person can track which words they have and haven't made. And even if they can, they are just copying. There's no thinking there at all. There's no blending, there's no segmenting, there's no retrieval. Same as the one down the bottom. If it's just the picture and the magnetic letters, all we're doing is copying a word. Now, if your goal is that children are at that beginning stage and you want them to come to understand the grapheme and work with it and match it, that's great. Then this activity will do what you want it to. But if you're hoping that they will learn to blend CVCs with this, it is not, unfortunately, it's really not going to get it done. The third picture I have there with the puzzles, they don't have to do any thinking at all again. So can you see a theme here where there is no thinking, there is no learning? All they need to do is put together that picture and then maybe they will write the words down. Now, I would caution you about having things that require children to write with a pencil on their own without adult help until you know that they have really good, solid handwriting. Until they have their stroke order and their letter formation correct, we run the risk that what they're actually doing is practicing how to write the letter incorrectly over and over. So that's just something to think about. Here's our explicit teaching model again, and let's look at where the hands-on activities fit. Where they don't fit is model, deconstruct, joint construct, and supported practice. That's what your lesson is about. And this phonics lesson structure here is pretty typical to most quality systematic synthetic phonics programs or approaches. So I haven't really invented anything magnificent, but in our teach along, we are going to look at exactly what that looks like. Where the activities come in, and here are some alternatives that I think would be more effective, is at the end of that teaching cycle. So there's some decisions you need to make when you're planning for this. You need to choose whether children are doing independent or group activities. The group work police are not going to come to your classroom and say, why are they not working in groups of 6 or 7? Because my personal answer would be, because this is term 1 and they don't know how to keep their finger out of their nose by themselves yet, let alone how to sit in a group and work together, and you want me to give them a dice? No. Now, they absolutely need to learn to work collaboratively and cooperatively, but there are other ways to do that. Don't mix up your teaching around learning those group learning behaviours with your academic stuff. Until they have those behaviours, I don't ask them to do it in an academic context. That's just me. Remember, no nonsense, Mrs. Rose, old-fashioned. But I don't apologise for that because that's how we get results. But in saying that, In my last school, we had a big empty double classroom and I turned it into an investigation centre, a big double investigation room for children to do their play-based learning. So yeah, don't misunderstand me when I say that. But you don't have to have them all working in a group. You want to keep the most vulnerable students with you for as long as possible. Doesn't mean that they miss out on the hands-on stuff, but you're not going to ask them to do these sorts of activities on their own before they're ready. And the real key to making this hugely effective is closely matching the hands-on task with the teaching either you just did today, or looking at that, we want this to be independent practice, material that you've previously taught. So most phonics programs will divide the alphabetic code up into sets. And so if you're working on set number 3, so there might be 4 or 5 graphemes to learn in set number 3, the activities you give these students to do on their own as independent practice will involve the graphemes that were in set number 2, because you know that they have them. Half of the reason, I think probably more than half, that our hands-on activity stuff becomes chaos is because we're asking children to do things they don't yet know how to do confidently. We overestimate how well they know this stuff. Now, if you have another adult in the room, so you may have a teaching assistant or a parent helper, the activities can become supported practice. So in that situation, your class setup could look like this. You are doing some really targeted small group work. The other adult in the room is doing an activity that's supported practice. So maybe you've just done a lesson with your blue group on shh, and then you have an activity in shh, and the other adults working on those. When those children go to the independent task though, they don't have to all sit together. They can be sitting on their own or in pairs, and the work that they're doing there is on the set of graphemes that they did before, the one before the one you're teaching now. I hope that makes sense. If that makes sense, give a little thumbs up in your reactions, or type yes in the comments. That makes sense for you. If not, and you have specific questions, just whack those into the comments straight to Vicky and she'll shoot them through to me and I can cover it off in a little more detail at the end. Here's another way of thinking about the literacy block, and definitely getting you set up with a good, strong literacy block is a focus of the teach along that's coming up. But here we can view it a little differently. Now, at the start of the year, you are going to teach whole class, because even children who may appear to have more skills, maybe they know some sounds, maybe they can blend orally, you don't know whether they have that skill and knowledge discreetly or whether they have it really firmly so that they can build on it. So you're going to teach everybody together. So you'll do a morning routine and you might be working on vocab, you might be working on building background knowledge there, doing your date, all of that stuff. Then you go into an explicit teaching lesson. So if we're just talking about phonics at this point, and of course there is way more to reading than just phonics, but because I've been talking about phonics, I'll stay on that theme. You teach your explicit lesson using that structure, the blue structure I showed you on a previous slide. Then you're going to release the top group with an independent task. You're going to keep the pink group with you a little more. Then you're going to release them as well, and they go off and do these activities. Your yellow group stays with you. We are in the habit as teachers of giving our most vulnerable students to our least experienced, least qualified person, who's usually our teaching assistant or our parent helper. Your most vulnerable students need the most experienced teacher, and that is usually you. So, as I said, your yellow group doesn't miss out on these hands-on activity. It's just that they're doing it with you so that you can provide extra support. This doesn't have to go for half an hour. This is 10 minutes. Then they come back to you. Oops, I'm jumping ahead. They come back, everyone comes back together to the mat, and you wrap up and reflect. Hands-on tasks are best when they are aligned to skill and knowledge development rather than being an opportunity for general exposure. So let me show you some other activities that are really simple to put together that you can use in your classroom and know that they're really targeted. Simple stuff. Now, I'm not a fan of spending every waking hour laminating. No one has time for that. You have a life. And if you don't, you probably want to get one. So you want to have your weekend time to yourself. So laminating and cutting takes so much time. So I bought these the other day. There was a set for about, I don't know, $2 or something. And what I've done is I've looked at the letters and sounds progression, which is a free online phonics approach that you can find, well, not online, the document is online and it's free, letters and sounds. And so they group their graphemes into sets. So I have 4 graphemes, 8 little figurines. I'm probably not showing you anything that you don't already have in your classroom, but if you're an early career teacher, take all these simple ideas, steal them and implement them. And they can play memory, they can play go fish with each other. Apologies for the helicopter. It's not a common thing here, so they've come along just for you. And so you can pop those down and that can be a pair activity. It can also be an independent activity or an individual activity as well. Now, another thing that's super simple is, again, I went to Kmart and you can go to any kind of cheapy shop and I've got the same activity, but one set is on farm animals and another set is on sea creatures. Now, you can use your color coding idea to extend to your activities as well. So if you have, if you take your sets, there might be 6 or 7 sets of sounds that the children are learning and you color code each one of them. And so the children know what set they're working on and they know that I'm working on the blue sounds. So I'm going to get the activities that are blue. Whatever it is, however you do it, color coding just makes everything easier. But all I've done is I've written graphemes just on the back of them. And again, lots of different ways to use these. You can write anything. It doesn't just have to be the graphemes. You can write words. You can get something a bit bigger and write sentences when they're up to that. You can have words and then pictures and they match them and find them. They have to read the word and match it to the picture. Super simple, because the idea isn't that they're doing these things for an hour. We know their attention span is about 5 minutes at the start of the year. And so you want to keep it simple. You also want to make it once. You don't want to have to make it 900 times because that's really annoying. Now, let me show you a fun game that my students always like. So I'm just going to adjust the camera here to this board. So this game is called Winner Winner Chicken Dinner. And the kids, particularly like saying that. So here's one for once children are starting to be able to blend. I'm just going to show you 3 cards because that's all that will fit in the camera view, but I do have a 4th here, or you could have more. So this is great to play in small group or partner work, and you have a little picture just hand drawn of a chicken, and everyone closes their eyes, or the one partner closes their eyes and the other partner just pops it underneath. So then they say open, and the children have to read the word and say, is it under sat? And then the person who's the leader at that time says, nope. And see, the other child's saying sat, but the one who isn't reading still has to sound out the word as well. Is it under map? No. Is it under pat? Winner, winner, chicken dinner. And the kids love saying winner, winner, chicken dinner. You can also say, change it out and make it a goat in a boat. Or, here's another favorite of mine, how now, brown cow. So we get to have a little bit of rhyming practice in there as well. It's like sneaking the vegetables into the dinner. For the kids, so they get that feel of those words, and we're building these phonemic and phonological skills into the everyday. But we don't have time to talk too much about that today because time is ticking, but certainly in the teach along we will. Okay, so that's my demonstration of some fun games for you.